So, voluntary voice, why it matters. Now, I didn't quite know what to make of that, so I've sort of got the opposite in my mind is you either think it matters or you're fine flying solo. So, do you need to join up? Do you need a voice? Or is it okay to be on your own, perhaps at a small organisation, surviving perfectly well without having to engage with that voice? Thank you ever so much for inviting me here. I'll give a bit of a warning. What I'm going to say isn't necessarily right. All it is an honest viewpoint from where I sit. So, I'll apologise in advance that, I will not claim, all of this, is spot on, but it is my honest perspective. And so I thought I'd start there, really. What is my perspective on your sector? It's certainly a very positive one, and I'm certainly off script and absolutely playing out my personal views here. And I've got them in, I think, five boxes, really. The capacity that you provide, if we didn't have that in Gloucestershire, in the southwest, an awful lot of things would just fail. You're a provider market for service delivery, but that capacity, is absolutely critical to the lives that we live. I think reach was my second category, and I think it was the Heineken test, reaching the places that other partners cannot reach. And I think the honest thing there, it's often the smallest players who've actually got the best reach. My third was diversity. The depth of skills, whether it be locality knowledge or specialist knowledge, is actually untouchable in terms of, do we really recognise that? But that's a strength of your sector. Under value, I think there's a huge number of issues. Complementary delivery, extending what statutory provision can provide. The voluntary multiplier, my term, but might bother you, that term. Services that statutory bodies can't afford to provide. There are lots of fantastic examples, the amount that carers provide. Models that couldn't exist in a market economy, and actually I look at your sector as the least likely to rip us off, which is important because, in other relationships that's not always the case. And lastly, I think it's a fantastic expression of community and social good. So I've got I start with a very positive outlook on your sector. Going back to that question now, why it matters. In my view, the strength of much of your sector is local and it's neighbourhood delivery. So why worry about the strategy stuff? Because the strategy stuff to me, is part of this voice. I want to do a bit of a diversion. Can you click onto the next slide? You have to go through my name for some strange reason. Click. That's it. Just this one slide. This is very much the toolkit of how Gloucestershire County Council runs. And I think a little story, I'll take you around the boxes of this, sort of answer the question that was posed in the presentation. So I'm going to leave the mic behind a bit here and shout. The box down there, sorry, it's a 4-box model. I had a 9-box model but couldn't remember it. Is it on? Am I on? Right. So 4 boxes, operational versus strategic, and today versus sometime tomorrow. A few months' time would do, really. Now, I believe that any smart organisation has to think about all 4 of these. With a few exceptions, but let's just start there. So there's a box here that if you forget this, if you go off into all this strategy stuff and you forget this one, you're going to come unstuck. So there's a box called operational today, and that to me is about good day job delivery. Anyone who forgets that is sunk. But anyone who just stays there, I would suggest has a fair chance of being stuck unless you're in a very, very protected environment. I think most good organisations, even if no one's changing the rules, moving the goalposts, need to think about the box called "It's today's business, but it's being strategic." And that's about stretching the business. You can do that in all sorts of ways. Value for money, happier customers, happier staff, better hitting need. I understand need better, and we're actually hitting that need better. It might even be about merging. Then there's a box over here, and that's asking the question, what's coming along? What's going to knock us off course? And I'm going to say a bit about that because I think that is bigger than it's ever been in the time I've played any sort of leadership role in my sector, and I think that's going to affect your sector. And a bit of a question, if I'm in that business and someone dramatically moves the scenery, can you still deliver the same products? I don't think in a lot of cases you can. So good business thinking to me is day job, stretch it, look what's coming along and think, do we need to change the products that we're delivering? So what I want to do next is explore that box there. I'll lose that before I get some echoes. And the crunch is you only need to bother about this side. You only need to think about horizon scanning if any of these are going to affect you. So let's go through the first one. That's a useful little reminder. Public sector finance. I think we are going into at least a 7-year challenge. Where it's going to be dire, to be honest. It's going to be probably worse than in the public sector than any time I've been employed by the public sector. But I think the most alarming situation is going to be the contrast. What's going to happen with the recession? Who thinks we're going to be out of a recession in 18 months? Yeah, some hands, 2 years? My guess is 2 years. We're probably going to see in our daily lives a sort of recovery. So house prices probably ticking up, sensible savings rates, employment picking up again. So let's say 2 years' time, we're sort of looking a bit positive. The public sector won't be. The public sector is going to be really hit by the financial situation. And we've not been in this situation in any time that I can remember, where the market economy is looking sort of okay, and yet public sector are absolutely stuffed. Let's just go through why. £800 billion public sector net borrowing in the UK at the moment, 57% of GDP. What's that mean to Gloucestershire? They're horribly big numbers. We're about 1% of everything in Gloucestershire, in the UK, Gloucestershire, 1% of the road network, 1% of the people. So if we take 1% of that debt, that's about £8 billion. That's the cost of funding the police service for the next 80 years, the cost of funding every single school and child in this county for the next 27 years. That's our share of that public debt. Both Labour and Conservative have promised to halve that debt in their first term in our next government. Honesty broke out in September when, just before the party conferences, that started to say that's actually going to hit public sector services, and then we had the sort of contest as to who could be the toughest, 9.3% or 10% cuts. Yeah, my view is unless somebody in my sector's got a sort of get out of jail card, and there will be some areas, we should be thinking about minus 10% funding situation per year for probably 3 years, because it won't land evenly. We're looking at losing about 500 jobs in the County Council over the next 3 years, and that's before we know how hard we're going to be hit by the Comprehensive Spending Review. So, that issue is huge. I don't know if that is going to affect you, but it's certainly going to affect us, and a lot of our relationships are with you. Second one I'd look at in that box there is personalised budgets. I think they're great.